All right, and we are live. So welcome to our first official nurse influencer roundtable. So give all of yourselves a round of applause. Thank you for being here. I'm actually really excited about this conversation that we're going to have. And for those of you who have been following, you know that nurtureship change is such a I don't even want to say a passion project for me. It's such a movement, and the fact that you guys have agreed to really take the stage and share your thoughts is so appreciative. And on behalf of Nurtureship Change, Rosa and I would like to really thank you for being here. So, without further ado, I want to just really give some highlights and give some background about Nurtureship Change and why we started before we get into the questions that we're going to ask you. And for Nurtureship Change, why we started. So, the beginning of at the beginning of the year, right? If I can go back to that, there were all of these executive orders, right, that were coming out, and as nurses, we gathered together and we just had a feeling, and we had questions. We wanted to know, where's our leadership, right? And it wasn't where's our leadership in a bad way. It's I think everyone was just really baffled as to what was taking place and really trying to regroup. And ultimately, we saw what was or what could happen and what was going to come ahead. And with with all of the humanities, right? The ethics, the social justice, and science, right? So when we look at research, when we look at the job loss, when we look at how healthcare was affected from NIH to you name it, there was a concern there, and it really helped to mobilize us. So Nurtureship Change is a nurse-led grassroots movement from mobilize that has mobilized or is mobilizing healthcare professionals and allies and activists across the nation, right? And we were born from the urgency of political, social, and healthcare crisis. And we believe that nurses is the largest and most trusted profession, and we are. And because of that, we formed as a group with a mission to really mobilize nurses, healthcare, as I mentioned, professionals, our allies collectively, so that we could transform the healthcare and justice so that everyone really can thrive. And it makes our mission is to unify healthcare, right? We want to really unify healthcare and the profession, and which has brought us to our pillars that I mentioned earlier, being humanities, ethics, social justice, and the sciences, all of which have been under attack. And we're here to really talk about that tonight. So I want to welcome all of you here once again. Thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Rosa because I know we have some great questions that we want to ask. We want to hear your perspectives, and I'm excited about this. So let's go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Thank you for that great introduction, Dr. Lindra. Appreciate you pulling all this together. And first of all, I'd love to have each of our guests introduce themselves a little bit. You all have handles on social media that people might know you by better than these names that you have, except Critical Care Casey is very clearly spelled out. So let's start with you, Critical Care Casey. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you into this tonight.
Hello, I'm Critical Care Casey, but if you follow me on LinkedIn and you're in, you might just know me as Casey Green with the alphabet soup behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a nurse for 11 years and very passionate about just ethics and the fact that nurses are a part of advocacy work. It's what shapes us in our profession. And it wasn't something that I initially started with. I didn't think that I was going to be like the advocacy nurse that I am today when I was a new grad. But those things kind of just shaped my experiences. And when having the opportunity to advocate for our patients, I've taken those opportunities as they've come. And my background in nursing is critical care, so ER, ICU, ground transport nursing, and then I'm also in nurse anesthesia school currently.
because it's never enough, right, Casey? Good job. That's awesome. And then Dr. Anna Valdez, would you tell us a little bit about your role in nursing and why you chose this path?
Sure. So Anna Valdez, my handle everywhere is at Dr. M. Valdez. So pretty easy to find since it's the same everywhere. I've been a nurse for 33 years. I am currently a professor of nursing at Sonoma State University. I am also the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Emergency Nursing. My background is in emergency nursing and transport nursing. I worked stretcher side 20 years full-time before I became an educator. I'm also disabled, and that is a part of my identity as a nurse. And my focus really is on equity and social justice in all areas. My passion is really about achieving equity and liberation for all people who experience oppression.
That's awesome. Very inspirational. Tyler, would you tell us a little bit about you and your role and why you chose this path?
Yeah, thanks for having me, everybody. Really excited to be here. My name is Tyler Cook. I'm a pulmonary nurse practitioner. People also know me on social media as that sassy NP. Long story behind that screen name. And I've been in clinical practice for 16 years, 10 as a nurse practitioner, 6 as a critical care nurse. Shout out to all the critical care nurses out there. And I'm actually Canadian born and educated. So I did actually all of my nursing school in Canada, but I've been in the US since 2011. And advocacy for me, I started in nursing school. I was actually the president of the Canadian Nursing Students Association for 2008, 2009. And that's really when I began being exposed to the other side of beyond just bedside nursing and really kind of developing my passion for blending both of those worlds. Because I think that there's often a disconnect between some of the people in policy and leadership and the people that are boots on the ground. And so I always wanted to be the type of leader and advocate that could maybe be involved in the best of both worlds. And so I currently serve on 2 different professional associations, one of which is my state nurse practitioner organization, and then the Association for Advanced Practice Pulmonary Providers. And I have a lot of passions, and I'm really big on evidence-based practice and really amplifying and lifting up the nursing profession because I have a lot of faith in what we do, and I'm very proud of our profession and what we can do as a group.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us today. And Cambria, tell us about you and your role in nursing and why you chose to join us on this path.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Cambria Nwosu. Most people will probably know me as at CJN Legal Nurse on social media. I been a nurse for going on 16 years as well, and started as a perioperative nurse, moved up in leadership, worked in administration as well. And then I also worked in telemedicine as a practice administrator. So I actually worked side by side with doctors as their colleague. So, but currently I am working as a legal nurse consultant. I actually own or co-own a business with my husband, who's also a certified paralegal, and we assist law firms and legal systems in navigating medical malpractice cases behind the scenes. So that combined with all of the experience I have seen on a systems level, on a hospital level, and from a bedside level, have reinvigorated my quest for justice, for healthcare advocacy, especially now when we know misinformation has run amok. So that is my new purpose alongside of what I do from day to day. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And just revisiting the pillars that Nurses Shift Change is built on. Our priorities are to focus on our humanity. We use this acronym HES. H is for humanity, E is for ethics, the first S is for social justice, and the second S is for science. So the first question that I have for each of you is, when you hear the core principles of the Nurses Shift Change movement, particularly these HES pillars, what resonates most with you and why? And I'll just go back in the order we came from with Casey.
So I will say, nurses shift change is kind of like to me, it's like a fresh breath, a breath of fresh air, because I feel like for so many nurses, there's leadership, but not really like the grassroots like nursing movements. And to me, ethics stands out the most. Mainly because I sit on the National American Nurses Association Scopes and Standards Committee, and was a part of the Code of Ethics, the next generation that just came out. And to me, like the ethics in which we do our practice, we're once again the most trusted nursing profession. The most trusted profession is nursing again. And so to me, people think that we're ethical in our job, but also the way that we work, the way that we care for our communities, to me is just so important, and it ties into humanity. But just being ethical, truthful, and trustworthy is the reason that our patients trust us so much. So to me, like having a grassroots movement focused on that ethics also helps like the legitimacy of what the goals that we're trying to accomplish, and the advocacy that we're doing on behalf of our patients and our communities and our profession.
I hear that. Thank you so much. And then, Anna, what about you? What resonates the most with you in our HEST pillars?
Yeah, I think they're all interconnected. And I think you can't really have one without the others in nursing. But social justice is the one that resonates with me the most, because my focus is really on health equity and belonging and anti-oppression. Social justice is really important to that. And I believe that unless nurses are engaged in what my friend Dr. Monica McLemore says, nursing the nation, and addressing the social and political drivers of health, which are deeply related to social justice, we're not going to achieve health equity. We're not going to improve the disparities that we currently see. We have to, as nurses, be engaged in understanding why disparities and inequities exist, so that those issues can be addressed. And I think we have to reach beyond, that kind of dyadic relationship of me and the patient, or me on my unit and the patients that I serve, to really understanding if we're the most trusted profession, we need to demonstrate that, right? And part of that is demonstrating respect for humanity and advocating that everybody has a fair chance at living the best possible life that they can.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Anna. And Tyler, what resonates the most with you?
Good. Hard to top that one. You guys are all so inspiring.
Hey,
I
you
think,
guys,
yeah.
we all rise together. We're not trying to one up with each other, right? We want to hear from your perspective, and no perspective is better than the other. Just be real.
For sure. There was a quote that my undergraduate nursing program, when I started nursing school, it said that nursing is a profession that blends science with compassion and technology, science with compassion and technology with humanity. And I think it really resonated with me. And when I had to think about what is the most important thing, because I think they're all important, I think I put science at the forefront, and I don't just mean like biological science. I mean like the social sciences and basically everything that a nurse has to do, because we are the jack of all trades. If you think about it, we have to kind of draw from social sciences, biological sciences, chemistry, everything. And I think that it's at the forefront of what we do. And in order to really be providing humanistic care, incorporating ethics and social justice, we really have to have a good foundation of scientific understanding in order to do that. And I think we've seen, as Dr. Nwosu was talking about, misinformation's run amok. If you don't understand the science, you might be thinking that you are standing for ethics and social justice when actually you're not, because you're actually misleading the public. And so I think that for me, and it's especially in the way that I practice, science comes first, because that allows me to kind of incorporate everything else afterwards.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Cambria, what about you?
Yes. So for me, in my current state, it's an expanded angle. So I have to combine ethics and social justice together, enforced by science. And why I say that is that ethics is not abstract morality, right? It's whether systems knowingly place patients and nurses in harm's way and then call it operational efficiency.
Mm.
So social justice, it's measurable disparities in outcomes, right? Staffing, pain management, maternal mortality, and more importantly, who gets believed. So, and then science, again, to Tyler's point, it gets misused when data is cherry picked, as we're seeing it in real time, to justify understaffing, to justify unsafe ratios, to justify cost containment. So, nurses, to me, and this is complete fact, are the only professionals who experience the ethical failure, the social consequences of that failure, and the scientific gaps all at once. So that's kind of like we absorb that in real time, and that's my view on that.
Mm.
Rosa, can I say something quickly about humanity since it wasn't discussed?
Yeah.
So, humanity is really core to what we do. And to have humanity and to exhibit humanity requires some humility. It requires compassion, empathy, caring, treating people with dignity, all kind of hallmarks of nursing. It also requires of us advocacy for human rights. And we are currently seeing tremendous violations of human rights across the United States. And I think it's super important that nurses understand that we have a role in protecting and advocating for human rights.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so many times we hear we should stay in our lane, but if Florence Nightingale stayed in her lane, nursing wouldn't exist, would it? And we wouldn't know about germs and hand washing, would we? You're right. Like, we got to find our humanity as we scale up our technology. We've got to maintain and improve our humanity. So going on to our next questions for each of you and your perspective as a nurse influencer, how can nurses use their voices and platforms to drive meaningful change in healthcare beyond the bedside? And let's start back with Casey again. That way I don't get confused out of order.
I think for me, I didn't have like a really natural progression into like being an influencer. I always said I'm a really bad influencer because I feel like to be authentic, you can't post every single time, like post to like a subscription, right? Like you can't post a subscribe thing every day, week, like month. It's kind of like going off of what's happening in real time and real feelings. And I think that for me, nurses, we have a responsibility to speak out, but we also have a responsibility, like everybody else is saying, to not feed into misinformation and disinformation. So I think that using your platform and building a platform where people trust you and making it like ethical is making sure that you're sharing information and content that's based off of more than one source, authoritative sources, not just one news article that's picked out, and being ready to like converse with people. And there's different types of like influencers where you just kind of put out content and you don't really interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people that are like in this panel right now are the kind of people that post things and then they interact with people. They're ready to have discussions with people about information and disinformation and politeful pushback and just conversation with people. Mm-hmm. And I think being an influencer is also like knowing sometimes that people are adding their viewpoints and more information to what you're posting. But I always try to just like speak from the heart and speak from my own experience. But then also, like, I'm a sassy, my handle's not the sassy NP, but I'm still like sassy when I post things, but like politely and still, because I feel like that's not what people don't want to see polished. They want to see like how you really are, how you really feel, and like your real takes on things. But I think choosing what kind of influence you want to be, do you want to converse with people or do you want to post content? And knowing, do you want to have that relationship with the people? Like, I know I speak in people's handle. So the legal nurse on here. She has thousands of followers, and she interacts with all of them when they comment on her things on Instagram. So, and like other platforms. So I think just knowing where you want to post and then just being authentically you. Again, I didn't start posting things on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram to have followers. I just thought it's my responsibility to speak out and speak up about what's happening, because every time you're not speaking up, you're just allowing it to happen, and you're saying that it's okay and permission's granted for everything that's happening, and it's not right, and you have to speak. Use your voice. Speak.
Beautiful. Thank you, Casey. And then Anna, let's come on back to you. And how do you think nurses can use their voices on different platforms to drive that change beyond the bedside? You started to mention that before.
Yeah, I think that don't get caught up in the concept of being a content creator or being an influencer. For example, I don't consider myself either of those things. I certainly engage on social media. There are people who would disagree with me that I'm not an influencer or content creator. But
and
in
invite
reality,
you to be on round tables because we think you're an influencer.
right. But half of what I share is not my own writing. I'm amplifying or sharing other important content from nurses who may or may not have a following. And so I don't want people to get caught up thinking you have to be engaged in social media in order to influence and to advocate. There are many ways to do that. If social media is a way that fits for you, that's fantastic. I enjoy it because I get to connect with people who are like-minded and build networks and community. But there are so many ways you can influence. For me, I'm an educator and a scientist, and those are the ways in which I often, share content or influence people is from an educator perspective. And so there are lots of ways to do it, but also you can influence and make an impact and advocate without having a lot of time. Like, I don't spend a tremendous amount of time on social media. I'm a busy woman. I'm doing research and teaching and, and all of these other things. But I enjoy having that interaction. And so what I would say is, pick something you're passionate about. Do micro activism. Do something, even if it's just resharing information that resonates with you or that you think is important. Pick something that matters to you. You saw with the four of us, we all had kind of different focuses of things that are really important to nursing, all of them. Mm-hmm. So pick something that really matters to you. Does it really matter to you that we're being reclassified to not be, considered a profession as it relates to federal loans? Does it matter to you safe staffing? Does it matter to you the inequities that are happening or what's happening to immigrants across the United States? Whatever it is, and just invest the time you have. That could be educating your neighbors and your family. It doesn't have to be on a large scale. You can still have an impact, but you have to take action. Right? It's all about action and sharing information. So even if you're just retweeting or reposting information, that is a really important way to be able to influence.
Well said. Thank you. And let's hear from the sassy NP. How sassy can he be with his answer? So how do you think nurses can use their voices and platforms to drive change beyond at the bedside?
I just want to first of all say, totally agree with Casey, Anna. I think you I echo exactly your thoughts on there's different ways to become an influencer. And I, like you, Anna, I don't like being called that, even though people do call me that. And I accidentally stumbled upon this. I mean, the whole reason I ever ended up on social media in the first place was because of the misinformation during COVID, and it angered me. And I was passionate about getting out there and just giving raw and unfiltered takes on it, because I was like, what you see is what you get. I'm not here to fake a personality. Like, this is me. And I think, Anna, before we kind of got into this topic, and it's about this topic, is like the whole stay in your lane thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got this all the time. You're a nurse, you should not stick to politics. And when I listened to a really interesting nurse practitioner in Washington, and I use this example all the time now. She would teach a policy class to nurse practitioner grad students, and these students would say to her, I don't care about that. I want to diagnose heart failure and I want to manage heart failure. And she would pose the question back and say, well, what allows you to do that? right? Legislation is what allows me to do what I do. That's what all of our practice is based on. So yeah, that is our lane, 110% our lane. And at the same time, advocacy, especially with regards to human rights, it's a core tenet of nursing. So this is our lane, and we need to own it and be loud about owning it and pushing back on rhetoric like that. And that's kind of how I ended up in the social media realm of things. There's been some highs and lows through that. And I think for me, what works is raw and unfiltered. What you see is what you get. I think the public deserves to know what's happening. I think social media gives us an opportunity to have our voices heard and to have these types of conversations where there's a lot of differing perspectives and good perspectives that we need to listen to. So I think there's a lot of good in it. Whether or not you want to call yourself an influencer or not, just be a voice in whatever way that you can.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And Cambria, what about you? How can nurses use their voices on different platforms to drive change beyond the bedside?
Well, I'm definitely taking everyone's answers for mine. So definitely spot on, everyone, on that. Nurse, I think the biggest piece, and I can speak from my purview, is that nurses, first of all, you have to know within yourself, when you speak publicly, you're not breaking trust, right? We're correcting the record. Because if we stay silent, we're letting institutions, whether it's a hospital system, a government entity, whatever the situation is, we're letting them write the narrative for us. So I think if you're thinking about that in the back of your head, that empowers you to actually want to press forward and do this. However, I also want to emphasize that we just don't tell stories, right? Yes, we take a lot of information that's already been reported on and amplify it to the best of our abilities, but we also contextualize them and make it more palatable for the person viewing it. Because not everyone watching us are clinical, right? Not everyone watching us is a nurse, is a physician. And they're usually patients that are scared. They don't know what's going on. They have no idea what you're speaking of. And so having that lens to actually break it down for them, where you're actually linking, this is what's happening, this is the policy behind why it's happening, and then these are the consequences. I think the biggest thing, again, back to what everyone was saying, you have to push back against that idea that nurses should be grateful, that we should be quiet, right? Or inspirational, like, oh, I get that all the time. Oh, I got on your page because you're a healthcare page. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about ICE? Why are you talking about this, that, and the other? You have to be able to have those uncomfortable conversations, because otherwise, again, this is part of the perioperative nurse in me. You got to have that backbone. You have to have that spine. You can't let anyone push us around. So I think that power, believe it or not, actually, you can see it through the screen. You can feel it. So I think people forget that nurses hold evidence that the public never sees. We see the patterns. We see the near misses. We see the repeated failures. So we are the content experts, whether you believe it or not, but we are. So I think lastly, again, social media for me, did I stumble on this? I'm sure I did. I don't think I did this on purpose to say, oh, this is what I want to do. But social media is definitely not about clout, right? It's about the countering these institutional narratives. And so if you're thinking about that while you're doing this, then you're doing the right thing. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. But definitely, I just want to make sure that visibility changes who gets questioned, right? Versus who gets protected. And so that's the part that resonates with me.
That's right. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
I did just want to add to, just real quick, that it might just be something that you're passionate about. Like the proposed loan changes and calling us graduate versus non-graduate. a lot of people saw that as like, oh, professional, we're professionals. And as a CRNA student, I saw that as, oh my goodness, so many people will not be able to go to school because it costs, that money doesn't cover the tuition. So, I mean, I was fine with putting how much, like, it's public knowledge. You can look at my school and see how much it is. And I was fine with breaking down that in a different way to like really put the impact on, like, it is more than just like the title. It has repercussions in communities that are already less likely to apply to CRNA school and less likely to apply for advanced programs. And even when the government pushed back and said, well, most nurses have these degrees and their hospital pays for them. Well, guess what? In CRNA school, you can't work. So that's great that you said that and you gave that pushback and that reasoning. That's great. That's not the lived truth and reality. And I felt like being like a true like influencer and like influencing people is also being the voice for people that either do not feel comfortable or are not able to speak in the same way that like you might be able to, and or like sharing their things and being the visible person. And so there might be things that you are uniquely qualified to speak on, and like your voice matters in these things too, because that's the perspective that nobody else is getting. So I just wanted to like add that too, is advocacy and like being an influencer too might just be speaking on, you know, something that is, you have a very unique perspective on this, or it impacts you directly personally and you want to speak on that topic and you feel very passionate about like speaking out against it.
Yeah. And to your point about specifically about the student loans, one thing that I like to bring to the forefront of that conversation is the fact that it's really not about these professional titles. It's about who has the ability to get their loans forgiven. A lot of these nursing degrees, like if you're not a CRNA, then you're probably not going to have a salary that warrants a $200,000 degree that would pay for it. So a lot of the pathways are for those nurses or nurse practitioners to go work in rural areas, and then the federal government forgives those loans and they don't have to pay it off. So we would be losing out on people who would be serving rural populations, and people wouldn't be able to pursue those advanced degrees in order to have more providers in the workforce. But theologians didn't lose their professional standing and their ability to take out $200,000 worth of loans, but they were never going to have them forgiven either. They were going to have to pay it. So it's very complex issues. And like, I love how you brought out the fact that it's not about, oh, we're so insulted they called us not professional. And some people acted really unprofessional about the terminology too, I just have to say. But I like it that we're getting more into the details of what does this actually mean? How does this play out? And then how do we respond practically? So let's move on to our next question about our responsibility as nurses. What responsibility do we have as nurses, leaders, and influencers to shape the future of healthcare policy, the future of our culture, and the public trust that we carry? And Casey, you just kind of spoke to this a little bit. So are you cool if I just go to Anna now? Does that sound good?
Yeah, I just want to add that like Addie Bernice Johnson was the first nurse elected to Congress in 1993. And never believed, Black woman, by the way, first nurse ever elected to Congress, and never believed that nurses did not have a seat in policy work. So much so that she just kept pushing boundaries and like wanting to believing that like nurses to actually make like continued change are a seat at those tables. So just we have a responsibility. We are part of that. And as history has like gone on, movements that have happened, like Clara Barton worked with Frederick Douglass, for example, when she was creating the Red Cross, and being a strong advocate for integration and the treatment of Black people. And she was a white nurse. So just nurses have always been from the beginning, like part of history and making policy. And so saying that like we're not a part of that is just not true. And we have a responsibility to be a part of it. It's not a choice, it's a responsibility.
Good point. Those are excellent examples. Thank you for sharing that.
You know
Anna?
what they are. I just want to interject for, I've been listening and hearing everything that you all have to say. You all have been so spot on, and that's definitely in the comments as well. And just to really echo what all of you are saying, specifically what Casey just mentioned, and I've heard legislation, right? I've heard political. And something that we keep forgetting is that nursing is political. And I don't know about you, but throughout my career, I've always heard like, oh, I don't get involved in politics. Well, you know what? We should, right? Especially we have rights. We have voters acts and we have voting rights, and we need to exercise those rights. And sometimes part of the reason why we're in certain situations that we're in is because we're not exercising the rights that we have. And voting is a huge responsibility for all of us. And be having that seat at that table, whether it's legislative, because we need to have a voice. What happens in certain healthcare systems is the same thing that happens in policies. People are making decisions for us and they don't actually understand how we practice. And that's part of the problem. So when we say we're not political or that's not our lane, that's part of the problem, and we're becoming a part of the problem. And that's a part of that complicity in regards to that silence. So we need to start using our voice. And I appreciate all of you for using yours. So, and without Anna, I'll let you go ahead. I just had to just interject there with that.
Thank you so much. So I want to go back to something Cambria said about power. We have to take control of our practice. We need to take control of our current and our future practice, and we are not in control of it. It is dictated to us largely. If you think about the things that influence our practice, it's government agencies, accreditors, reports like the Future of Nursing report. If you haven't read the Future of Nursing report, those are really powerful products that, that set the tone and the future for our practice. There are 12 people on the committee, 6 of whom are not nurses, 4 were physicians, 2 were non-clinicians, and 6 were nurses that did not cover a wide range, things like public health, school nursing, different specialties, to decide what the future of nursing is. And we continue to allow this. We have a lot of power. There are more than 5 million of us in the United States. If we don't show up, things stop. We have power, but we have to be united. We have to come together. We have to do things like the Report for Duty rally, be engaged with groups like this that are pushing us forward. And in oppression, one of the tools of oppression is keeping you so tired and exploited that you can't fight back. Right, where it just feels like too much. More than 50% of nurses are burned out right now. That's by design. They could fix staffing issues if they wanted to. They could fix other ways in which nurses are harmed, the moral injuries that we experience, but we're not making them do that. We're allowing that to happen to us, and we're doing that by not being united and not having a voice and not speaking out. And we cannot liberate nursing, which is a profession. And I would say, to Casey's point, one of the major issues that I have with the reclassification for loans is not whether or not we're professionals. I don't think they can decide that, but it is about access, right? And so we will be denying people access to advanced education where they can contribute and help to lead and do those kinds of things that are going to impact the future of nursing. And when we take away that access and we, force nurses to stay only at the bedside in hospitals and not be able to gain more education or tools to be able to lead the future of nursing, we end up having our practice dictated to us, and largely it currently is dictated to us, and we need to take control. And this is one of the ways, is to be engaged and actively working with other nurses in a unified way to set our standards. What is nursing to us? What are we going to do? What is the future? What are the priorities? And not just have them handed to us. You would never see a Future of Medicine report that was a third nurses. And no shade to our physician colleagues. I love my physician colleagues, but it's not appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah. You know it's your turn, Tyler. Go on.
Anna's got me all fired up over here. I think, I had a couple things kind of written down for this. And I think one of the themes that I like to say, there's something to be said about being, the most trusted profession. But let's be honest, we need to be assertively honest, right? And I think that everybody around this table tonight has been. And I think I can speak for myself that I personally, for quite some time, have felt quite let down by nursing organizations, the ones that we learn about in school that we should be a part of. And I personally feel let down, not by every single one, but just in different ways. And I think really COVID really brought that out. And I think that there's so much fragmentation, right? We have 50 states. In Canada, we have multiple provinces. Each, province or state has their own nursing union, has their own nursing professional association, and it has their own regulatory agency. And I think it makes it really difficult because there's so much variability. But during COVID, we were seeing nurses on professional associations, spreading misinformation. Like, this does not look good. Even people, involved in regulatory agencies. There were so many different things that bothered me, and I think that the most empowering experiences I've had is with grassroots, or like our smaller organization, something like this organization, my state nurse practitioner organization. It all goes down to who are the boots on the ground people that really understand our day-to-day, what we do. And it's organizations like this. It's our smaller state organizations. It's our grassroots organizations. And I think Dr. Nwosu said it too about the uncomfortable talks. We all need to get comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
Not everything in our profession is rosy. And I think it's important that we say that and that we are assertively honest about that. And it goes back to kind of being raw and unfiltered. I think that there's many different ways to communicate truth. And what works for one might not work for another. But I think even in a situation like me, I've actually kind of stepped back my social media presence a little bit for several reasons, but I still continue my advocacy in other ways. And I take my personality with me to those seats that I have. And so I just think that it's time that more people use their voice how they want to use their voice, but do so in a way that we're telling the truth in a candid way.
Yeah, and with this conversation, I want to pull Dr. Lindra back in here because what you're doing, Lindra, with your influence is training nurses to reshape our cultural expectations in healthcare and really renew some public trust by operating at the top of their license in a lot of ways and learning how to run a business. Because let's be honest, a lot of the issues that we have in healthcare are business decisions being made by business people who don't understand healthcare. We are in healthcare and we're doing the most, and you could not pay us to do all of the things that we do and to suffer the way we suffer, right? But these business people making these business decisions, they can't even relate to that, right? So, Lindra, would you mind to comment real quick on, how you see that as your responsibility as a nurse to reshape culture, like from a business standpoint too, as a nurse?
Absolutely. I'll talk about that briefly. So for me, it goes back to what I said and what you just said about we being able to operate at the top of our licenses. A lot of times we get boxed into what nursing looks like, right? And I think someone said it. Oh, well, you're a nurse. Why are you doing that? Well, you know what? Why can't I own a business? We run a business every shift, right? We're just running someone else's business. So now we can take our licenses or our expertise, everything that we have, and we can totally translate all of that into something that can be our own consulting business. Maybe you're consulting for healthcare, right? We see all of the problems that we can definitely do something about, and we do all the workarounds, whether we're in leadership, whether we're at the bedside, all of the things that we see in healthcare. We have a solution to those things, right? And so why not use our expertise? But we've been trained that we need another degree, we need another certification, and those things are great. However, how about take the knowledge that we have, because we've been trained at the top of our licenses, take that knowledge and transfer it into a solution for what you already see in healthcare. So that's a lot of what I do in practice. And that's also what really encouraged me to want to be a part of Nurses Shift Change, right? Because looking at the transformation that we can make in healthcare, what if we did that collectively as an organization? So Nurses Shift Change isn't just it's not just a grassroots. This is a movement. Like, this is an entire movement that you all are a part of. So I'll stop there because I definitely want to continue to get through the night. And this is about nurses really taking their power back, as you mentioned, as Casey mentioned, as Anna mentioned, and joining us at the rally, at the Report for Duty rally in May, and learning how, because no one talks about these things, right? It's taboo, or why are we having these conversations? Because they matter, and we need to understand why they matter and the foundations of it all. So thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Cambria, what responsibility do we as nurses have to be leaders and influencers and shape the future of healthcare policy, culture, and public trust?
Well, I'm definitely trying not to repeat all of the excellent answers here, but I always think of this phrase, especially when it comes to responsibility. Responsibility is power, and power without accountability is harm. So I believe that the responsibility of frequently challenging leaders and even other nurses who demand loyalty instead of safety. If you are not even in the realm of caring about my personal safety as a nurse and taking care of that patient to make sure they're safe, that's a problem. So, and you have to be willing to step up and speak out on that. I also believe that performative allyship and sponsored silence needs to be called out immediately. Yes, what's going on right now in this country is absolutely horrific. We all know it. It's not new though. And we have to have those honest conversations and be ready to call this out. Marginalized communities have been terrorized for decades, if not centuries, in this country. So are we choosing to be selective in our outrage, or are we truly going to be responsible and stand up for all people, no matter what their socioeconomic status is, no matter where they came from? So, so I believe that the other piece I would like to add is that credibility is very fragile, especially now. And so once it's lost, as we all know, it's very hard to rebuild. So that is a huge responsibility across the board, especially if you're in a public facing need, but especially with our patients, as we all know, just the whole state of healthcare right now is so fragile and untrustworthy right now. So how do we get to that point where we build it back up, where people actually trust the system again? So I think if we become brand safe messengers instead of actual patient advocates, which we're supposed to be, the public trust is going to continue to collapse. So once that trust is gone, nothing can get it back.
Can you say that again? The brand safe messengers? Can you define that real quick?
So you're basically a messenger just for the brand. So to Tyler's point, just for the organization, right? You're only speaking on behalf of the nursing organization, but you're not being a patient advocate. You know they've been silent on patient safety. You know they've been silent when it comes to outcomes and harm, but you're still the messenger for that voice because of whatever reason that you chose to, which is not the goal. The goal is we're patient advocates, and not only we're patient advocates, we're nurse advocates. We're supposed to be safe too. We should be able to go to work and come home with no problems. So so that's where kind of like where that messaging comes from. So
That's great. Thank you for
Mhm.
bringing that out. That's awesome. All right, then that brings us to our closing question. And Lindra, you want to lead this round?
Sure. So I guess, well, not I guess, but this has been just absolutely amazing, right? The perspectives, just hearing everything that you guys have added to what we believe, what we know, what we want to encourage, and what we want to influence. And you guys have done just that. And I appreciate all of you for it. What I do want to ask is, I guess it's really, why do you think people should? What are your perspective as to why do you believe it's important for nurses and our allies to show up for the rally in May? And I will, you know what, and Dr. Nuosa, I'll start with you since you've been like kind of last going going around.
Yep.
No worries. I love soaking all the education and knowledge, so it's all good. But the why, um, I mean, we consistently point out, right, that healthcare is collapsing, and we already know it's happening in real time. But what are we doing about it? Are we just going to sit on our hands and just let it be? Um, we know that nurses, especially, are being retaliated against. Um, Licensure is being threatened, their employment are being threatened. There's consequences to them advocating and speaking out. And so, a rally such as this one would amplify that voice that you're not alone in this. This is a team effort and we have your back, even though it may not feel like it at the time. I think to have a voice where nurses actually feel empowered, because you have to feel empowered to do something that is beyond yourself. And yes, you would automatically think nurses, because we're nurses, would automatically do that. But when you are, to everyone's point, when you're burnt out and you don't feel that you trust the system or you just trust your colleagues, now let alone the system, you don't feel protected. And then when you don't feel protected, that's when you start, turning into yourself and becoming a shadow. And that's what we don't want. We want to be able to empower each other to say your voice does matter, regardless of what just everyone else is saying. Your voice does matter. I believe that policy decisions, as we all know, are accelerating, to Anna's point, without bedside representation. That is outrageous to this day. But I do need to also point out we do have bedside representation in Congress, and they're not doing what their part either. I'm going to just say it flat out. They voted for a lot of this that's going on right now. So it's about having the right people in those type of seats making those policy decisions that are nurse leaders. So I think, again, back to my point earlier, collective visibility, which is what is absolutely needed right now, it will reduce individual vulnerability. So that's why I think this is important.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Tyler, you want to go next?
Yeah, I that Dr. Mosu, I totally agree, and I think like kind of how I'm thinking of the same thing here is we do have a voice. I know sometimes it feels like we are voiceless. It's frustrating. I know those are all valid ways to feel, and I'm not going to sit here and summarize all of the issues that we're having, whether it's staffing, whatever. But we still have a voice, and if we do not use that voice, okay, we're going to lose it completely, and other people are going to step in and speak for nurses. So I think it's a time of self awareness to really understand the realities of what's going on. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. There's no denying that, but we have a voice, and in order for it to do anything, we have to use it. And I think power is in numbers, and I think that these types of organizations in the future are going to do more than what we're seeing with some of our professional organizations today. I'm just sitting around a table of people I just met virtually, and I feel like we are all on such similar wavelengths. I feel like we knew each other in past lives, and I feel like there are a lot of people like us sitting around this round table tonight that have wonderful things to say. And I think when you put all of those people together, it's limitless what we can do. And so just having that self-awareness that we do have that power, we do have that voice, don't feel completely defeated, and you're not alone. And so I think that we all have to show up for each other, for the profession, and for what we stand for as people.
I like that word limitless. I truly do. Uh, Someone, Meg said, thank you, Cambria. Where is the accountability? Nurses in high places will not save us. Where's the accountability? The accountability, I think part of that is, joining and showing up at the rally, showing up for yourself. And definitely just to echo everything that you just said, Tyler, and Dr. Cambria, everything that you just said as well. And I'm looking forward to what you're saying, what you have to say.
Well, thank you, Tyler and Cambria. I thought those were really great responses. And I agree that, even though we have different focuses, different backgrounds, we're really aligned. And I think that's true of nursing. So 2 reasons you should show up. First, there's power in numbers. 20 people show up, the voices won't be heard, right? We have to make that commitment and show up. And that's how we are able to hold our power and leverage our power. The second is, we are hurting. Let's be real, as nurses, this is the hardest time in my career of 33 years to be a nurse. More than 50% of nurses are burned out. We have nurses that are committing suicide. We need healing as well as change. And community is a great source of healing. Being amongst people who share your views, who are supporting you, who are working together with you is incredibly healing. I always feel so restored when I am in even small circles like this one with nurses who really care and want to create change. So there's a lot of personal growth and joy that can come out of building that community and being in community.
Absolutely. I have to agree. And when you mention burnout, that is something that, for those of you, most of you on here know that that's something that's near and dear to me. And when you talk to nurses who are actually at the bedside still right now, something that they'll tell you is that a lot of our seasoned nurses are nurses who have been nurses. It used to be you would go onto the units and nurses have been there 25 years, 30 years. You don't really see that anymore. Your senior nurse now is probably been there maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years. And that's unnerving. And it says a lot. It says a lot about what's happening in healthcare. So how do we reclaim that? How do we reclaim that power? How do we build our community, right? And again, this is where organizations like Nurses Shift Change, right? Being a part of that community is so important. So I love and appreciate you really bringing it home and talking about community. Casey, what are your thoughts?
So I thought about this question a lot. I'm an unapologetic millennial. We've seen some things, millennials. If there's millennials in this chat, I am 34. So why do you need to go to a rally? I'm 34 years old. I am old enough that my parents went to protest. I am old enough that their parents, my grandparents told me about how they used to have to take Greyhounds into the city because they were not allowed to go to the closest school next to them because it was segregated. Talk to people who are like older, talk to your grandparents. Like, this is not something super far away. My mom had to have the NAACP step in so that she could go to elementary school. So if that doesn't like move you, like, why do we rally? Why do we show up? Because our parents did, our grandparents did. As a millennial, too, that worked during COVID, I was oriented by somebody who worked on my unit for 15 years. The first nurse that I precepted her in a year because all of the experienced people, and this was a little bit before COVID, like a year or two before COVID, I was running charge and me and my coworker were like, what are we doing? And it's sad because I remember when nursing was great, but also I also think that millennials who experience like COVID, who that they enter Gen Zs who are entering the profession now, it's not the same profession. It's unfortunate, but it's not. And it's like, what do you do with COVID? I think that the one of the best, worst things that happened was COVID. Horrible for our patients, horrible for our community, horrible for the way in which we saw the healthcare system essentially break, and the abuse, like from heroes to zeros, essential mentality. But it created righteous anger in people that will never let the status quo be the thing. But what do you do with that righteous anger, right? So be the change, be involved in nurses shift change, show up at a rally, do something with that righteous anger because that will keep you in the profession. I know personally, and I'm fine with speaking about it. I've talked about it on social media. I was about to quit. I could not stand nursing. I could not do it anymore. I was so burnt out. And certification, wanting to be better for my patients and become certified, wanting to know the knowledge for my profession, wanting to be an advocate for our profession, not just for our patients. I've been doing that forever, but wanting to really be involved in what was happening in this profession and knowing that it was good. It was really good before, and somehow it got broken. And it's our job to fix it. We entered this profession. It's not our fault that it broke, but we can make it better. And if you believe in that and you channel your righteous anger into solution, into accountability, somebody mentioned the names of elected representatives that got into Congress, are nurses, and have voted against their interests, their community, their professions, their patients. Hold them accountable, get them out. Think about getting involved yourself. I joined our ANA Illinois as a board of director member at 34, literally super young, definitely inexperienced, but there's people that have experience. Nothing, they said, do you want to run? And I said, sure, let's do it. Open up your mind to getting involved and don't just see this profession as something that your job is to go to work and come home. Because if your job is to go to work, come home, every single thing that is happening, you are part of the negativity, all of the bad things. Like, feel purpose in the profession and let that. And if you don't want to get involved or you feel like it's too hard, take that righteous anger and direct it at change. Show up to the rally. Start there, baby steps, share the things that Nurses Shift Change talk about, and get involved. Even if it's just here, let that be the starting point and the springboard to find what thing you're super passionate about and go forth. Like, this is my rally call to you, and this is the reason that I want to be involved, because as somebody who's not, I have less than 20 years of experience, less than 15. And I got involved because I wanted it to be better for people, for the Gen Zers and the alphas that will come in, and for them to not have to suffer the same way that poor millennials did when we joined this profession, and some people who joined during COVID. Our profession is better than that. So be the change and just let the work inspire you. Let it take you on the journey and be ready to. We gave you the ticket tonight, right? Like, if you're here, you're listening, you're watching the replay, we gave you the ticket. What are you going to do with the ticket? Are you going to go on the journey? Or are you just going to say, no, adventure doesn't await me? So it's really exciting work. I've become very passionate in this, but this is my call to action for you. Get involved, start with Nurses Shift Change, and go from there and find things that make you passionate and lean into it fully.
I just want to add one thing really quickly. I really appreciate Casey and Cambria talking about nurses in Congress who are not doing their job, not following ethics of nursing. Shout out to Representative Lauren Underwood, who literally saved healthcare for millions of people in America. So we know we got one out there that's doing the right thing. My friend, Dr. Nancy Mannion, is running for Congress in Philadelphia. I can tell you that she will be the kind of nurse we need in Congress. So let's support the nurses that are doing it, because there are a lot who voted against things that were critical to nurses and to patients and to healthcare. So thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing it up. And if you're listening, whether you're watching this on the replay, or you can definitely go onto our website, nursesshifchange.org. We have a voter's badge on the page where it'll show you how to sign up to make sure that you're voting. That's our voice, guys. Like, this is how we use our voice with voting, or even get involved. look at what's going on in your communities. Start there. Start in your board of commissions in your educational system. Run for city council. Start there. We really need to get involved as nurses, as the profession, right? And profession aside, I know we're nurses and we're talking about nurses, but you don't have to say to yourself, oh, I'm a nurse, why am I running for office? Because this is why we need a voice, right? So that we can have people who are in those positions we're doing the responsible, ethical thing, and making sure that what we see, the broken systems that we see, making sure that our voices are heard and we're helping to repair those systems that we want and where we see the needs for our communities, for our patients, for the health system. You have to ask yourself, how can I make a difference? How can I be a part of the change, right? So we definitely ask that you report for duty. And then again, with this being a movement, going beyond the report for duty, Raleigh, because it's going to take a village. Right. And this is what we're here as a community. We're showing up for you, and we want you to show up for yourself as well. Rosa, do you have any last words that you want to mention before I wrap up? I'm sure you do.
I really do. And I want to surprise you all by quoting somebody who is not necessarily ethical, because I think he makes a good point. I was listening to an interview with Sam Altman, the current CEO of OpenAI, talking about how when he was growing up, he thought the adults in the room knew what was going on and they had a plan and they were going to make it happen. And he realized, I guess not too long ago, the adults in the room don't necessarily know what's going on, and they are us. We are them. We are the adults in the room, even if we're millennials. So we can look back at our parents and grandparents who led the way before us, but this is our time. We're the ones whose knees work and who have the education to speak from. So it's our responsibility to be the adults in the room and do our best.
Can I just shout out one more person? Meg Lambrich, I think I'm saying that right, said re-elect Cori Bush. Cori Bush did her job when she was there. And in part, she lost her job because she was doing her job. So another thing we need to do is really support when nurses are going out there and they're on the line and they're trying, we have to back them. So I didn't want to leave her lost because I forgot to mention her. Let's bring her back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. I mean, tonight we've affirmed a powerful truth, right? Influence is it's not measured by follower count, but by action, right? And the conversation, it made it clear that every nurse has the ability to influence, whether that influence shows up online, in their workplace, in their neighborhoods, or at the policy level. Right. So I appreciate how all of you shared that influence begins with education that's closest to us, right? Having conversations that inform, challenge, and move people to think differently about healthcare and nursing. And I can so appreciate how the discussion just really explored many paths into, like I said, influence from leadership and clinical practice to advocacy, ethics, right? When we look at the 75th anniversary of our Code of Ethics, we have to keep that in mind and really be true sermons of that, right? So I think a recurring theme of responsibility that nurses carry to engage in uncomfortable conversations. But again, it's time for us to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And something that we share in our Nurses Shift Change ebook, which is available on our website. You can go to nursesshiftchange.org. Our ebook really provides practical strategies. It has been used in educational settings, and we encourage you guys to support the ebook. And the ebook is, as I mentioned, is really filled with practical tools, with guidance, and just really with a lot of discussion that we had tonight. And it's echoing some of that discussion and more. So we definitely want you guys to share the ebook, report for duty on May 6th through the 9th. So if you log into our website, there's information that you can find with hotel accommodations and more information. So we are ready. We are ready for May 7th, 2026. We are excited about it. We can't wait to see you guys. And I'm just looking to see if I missed any comments. Most of the comments have been absolutely wonderful, just support, people in agreement. And I just want to say again, thank you all again. If there are any last words, if not, I will bid you all good night. And again, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having us. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to be in community with all of you.
Thank you.
Agreed. Everybody have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.